which is Tony. Yay, good job, Tony.
Hey, my name is Tony, and I'm a real alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. And thank you, Don, for asking me to share. It's always a privilege and honor to share at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. For those of you that are at Monday Night Palisades, I have the same story, so you can leave now. I'm not going to change it. I may change a little bit, so, look for those parts that I do change. Boy, Mike, 1 year guy, you said it all, brother. Tyrese, from a mess to a message. I never heard that before. I like that, from a mess to a message. I look around this room and there are so many people in here who are so important to my sobriety. I mean, my friends Gary and Michael and, oh man, my new friend Bill and Jackie, and not you, Don. Lionel, and guys that, basically grown up with, known 25, 30 years. And, when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, number one, I wasn't an alcoholic. I was just having some problems from non-habit-forming freebase cocaine. I was born a rich white kid in Beverly Hills. Then I started drinking. I have a twin sister. My twin sister's name is Antoinette, and they call us Tony and Tonette. And my twin sister is perfect. She's never done anything wrong in her life. She's a born-again Christian, and, I'm a born-again heathen. And, we were like quite the opposites growing up, and she was my mother's favorite, and my mother hated me when I was growing up. At least that was my perception, because my mother had me incarcerated when I was 12 years old. She had me incarcerated 6 months after I took my first drink. Coincidence? I don't know. I took my first drink behind the barbershop on the corner of Avalon and Imperial. My first drink was Boone Farms Red Mountain Wine. The good stuff. All you got to do is open the cap, baby. And you just pull the jug. I also had one of those funny tasting cigarettes. Non-habit forming. 6 months later, I'm incarcerated. My mother's carrying me to the juvenile hall. And I remember that feeling when she was carrying me to juvenile hall. I was thinking, oh man, this is not good. You're in a bad situation here, son. And I wanted to tell my mother, I wanted to say, Mother, please, I just want you to love me. I just want to be okay. But instead, what I did is I made a decision based on self, and that decision was nobody will ever hurt me again as long as I live. I'll never feel like this again. I hate this feeling. And so what happened for me, and I think it happens for a lot of men, particularly, is I put on a shield, and that shield was nobody's going to hurt me, and just F it. F the world. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. And that was my cry until I got to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. People would try to help me, and I said, you don't understand. Just leave me alone. You don't understand. Leave me alone. I'm not like you. Before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was in the Army for 10 years, 11 months, 22 days, and 4 hours, 30 minutes. I did 3 tours of Vietnam. I've been wounded twice. Did a lot of crazy stuff. And the first time I got shot at, I'll never forget it. I was so fearful. I was so frightened that my knees were shaking uncontrollably. I was sweating profusely. I was frozen in my tracks, and I peed in my pants, and I'm like, oh, God. Then all of a sudden, a switch turned on, and I became stark raving mad. I became stark raving mad, and that terror, the terror of real fear and real fright took over. And that became my life until I got to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I became really afraid, I became stark raving mad. And I didn't know what that was. I never knew or understood what that was, but I know it served me well. It kept the right people away and let the wrong people in. It did things for me that I couldn't do for myself. You know, and after I got out of the Army, I had a really kind of successful career, and I ended up, I always say, ended up in this house in Beverly Hills with 2 German cars in the garage. I had a beautiful girlfriend and a dog named Spot. And I had arrived, just like Bill Wilson. You know, I had arrived. The problem with arriving was I took me with me. You know, I was there, and if you'd asked me who I was, I'd have given you my business card and say, this is who I am. And then you see what I got. You see, because that's what I was all about. It's what I had and what you could see. But inside, I was dying. Inside, I was lonely. I was afraid. You know, but in those days, you couldn't tell somebody that you were lonely and afraid. You couldn't tell somebody how hurt you were. You couldn't tell anybody how you really wanted to just be loved. And so, you know, I know in the final analysis, that's all what we all want, just to be loved, cared for, and acknowledged. But I couldn't tell anybody those days because you got to understand, I'm a man. A man doesn't do those things. You know, and I'd prove beyond a shadow of a doubt what a man I was. You know, my 3 tours of Vietnam, the medals I had, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a man. The problem was I was still that 12-year-old kid, still frightened, still looking for love. You know? And my drinking was like, you know, characteristic of everybody in here's drinking. You know, it started off just the weekends, man. And just a little, you know, unfortunately, if you're a purist, I say I'm sorry about that, but my story involves a lot of drugs, a lot of that not habit-forming freebase cocaine. I think they call it crack now. Same difference. You know, I just started off on the weekends. And then, you know, the weekends were Friday and Saturday and recover on Sunday. Then it became Friday, Saturday, Sunday, recover on Monday. Then it became Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, recover on Monday. Then it became Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Forget about Monday. We won't even go in on those days. You know, I had this great job. I had this great girlfriend. You know, and the thing of it was, it wasn't enough. Because enough is never enough. You know, because I always want more, and more is an addiction for me. And, God, I'm really feeling nostalgic today. Cause, you know, it's really funny. I look around this room and, you know, I see people. That's Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. There's people that I just, like, love. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't love anybody. I didn't love myself. I hated myself. You know, I really hated myself. I hated myself for putting myself in the position I was in. I hated myself for all the reasons. I hated myself because I was black. I hated myself because I was in the Army. I hated myself. I could go on infinitum. And I didn't know this stuff. You know, they say we get here with a massive ego, and not only we get here with a massive ego, we get with these feelings of inferiority. And that's what I had. I didn't even know that either. I was just mad. I was just mad. And so my weekends started turning into every day, and every day was turning into every day. And my girlfriend would say stuff like, you really need to cut down, and I'd say, just leave me alone. Or my friends would say, you know, you really are getting a little crazy here, and I'd say the same thing. I'd say, leave me alone, you don't understand. And, you know, and I remember the day that my girlfriend was leaving me, and I knew she was really leaving this time because she'd left me a couple of times before. And this time she was putting the dog in the car, so I said, uh-oh, she's really means it this time. And so, like, you know, I saw her when she pulled out. And I said, oh, cool. So I ran and I jumped on the hood of the car. And we were riding down Wilshire. And I had this moment of clarity as we were riding down Wilshire. And I'm hanging on the car. And all of a sudden she came to a stop and I slid off the hood of the car. She tried to do that a number of times, but this time I really fell off the hood of the car. And I ran home. And the reason I ran home because I remembered I'd left the door open and there were drugs on the table. Because I'm that guy. I'm that guy. If there are drugs or drink to be had, I want it. It's mine. And I didn't see a woman again for 9 years. And, you know, she left me and I was all by myself, and it's exactly where I wanted to be. You know, because if you tell your family, you tell your friends, you tell people that care about you to leave you alone, what happens after a while, they leave you alone. You know, and I'm exactly, as Bobby Ann used to say, I'm an alcoholic by themselves is in bad company. And that's where I was, in bad company. You know, and this job sort of went away. They told me, hey, Bobby, The job sort of went away. They told me, why don't you just stay at home and we'll pay you for the rest of the year? And I had the greatest job ever. I got paid to house sit my own house. And I sit there and I just started drinking and using with a vengeance. You know, I can tell you what it led to is that every day I had to get up and say, well, I'm not going to drink that much today. I'd take a drink, I'd do some drugs. Next thing I know, I'm drinking and drugging all day. And where I would end up eventually was that I would end up in my bedroom closet. About this time, I weighed about 135 pounds. I suffered from malnutrition. I had dehydration. I was a little paranoid, a little schizophrenic. I had this thing I called the window disease, because every 5 minutes you got to run to the window and see who's out there, because there was somebody out there, you know, and they was real to me then as Richie is to me today. And I never caught them, though. You know, you could hear the voices go, and you go, be quiet, I can hear them. And they'd go away. Then you'd hear them again, you know. And I just figured out it was some alphabet agency, CIA, DEA, NBC. I didn't know, didn't care, didn't matter. They were out there and they were out to get me, you know. And I have to tell you that, you know, I'm a Vietnam veteran. And at that time I was well armed. I had a few weapons. And I would sit in that closet and wait for them to come get me. So I figured I could see the headlines. Vietnam vet goes out in blaze of glory. That was going to be my headline. And I was prepared to die. I was prepared to die because I didn't like the way I was living. I didn't like the way I was living. And what happened to me can best be described as a series of coincidences. And once again, I tell you, coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. My twin sister called me one day and she said, Tony, you cannot come visit your mother anymore because you do stupid stuff. You do stuff like steal from us. You do stuff like tell your mother you have cancer when we know you're a drug addict. And I said, F you and leave me alone. She said, that's okay, brother, I love you. And she said, I'm going to go to church this weekend and we're going to pray for you. Now, I'm a Vietnam vet. Not only am I a Vietnam vet, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Because if you've been where I've been, seen what I've seen, and done what I've done, there cannot be a God. Yet here was my sister saying she was going to go pray for me. I tell her to take her God and her church and all that and put them where the sun doesn't shine and leave me alone. Just leave me alone. You know, and there I was, all by myself. Once again, coincidentally, I had this neighbor, Linda Kay, some of you know her, who lived across the street from me. And this woman I hated. She was nosy. She was always in my business. She called the cops on me twice. She called the cops on me once because my girlfriend was beating me in the street with an umbrella. I mean, she was really wailing on me. She called the cops on me. The second time she called the cops because one night I looked out in my backyard. I had this large avocado tree. And I saw these Vietnamese in the trees. Now, I have no idea how they got to Beverly Hills. But I am an armed Vietnam vet. And so I crawled through the house. That's right. Jumped out of the back door in my best John Wayne pose. The cop that took my weapon said I killed 7 leaves that night. He came and took my weapon, said sleep it off and come get your weapons later. But I hated this woman. I thought she was a hooker. Now, the reason I thought she was a hooker, she left her home every night around 6:30, 7 o'clock. She didn't come back to around midnight. All day long, there's women going in and out of her place. I said, well, she must be a madam. She had this weird bumper sticker that said Easy Does It on her car. So I said, this woman is a hooker. And I said, well, as soon as I get my stuff together, I'm going to go across the street. And she, but I hated her. Coincidentally, a couple of days, you know, my nights in that closet were like this. I would go in there with whatever drugs I had to have and what I had to do, and I would drink and I'd use, and I'd point the guns out and wait for them to come, and invariably I'd black out. Come to the next morning, stand in the middle of my bedroom and go, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stop? But what started happening is in that closet, I started putting my gun in my mouth. I mean, as I stand here today, and I never want to forget it, I have a sense memory of that steel being in my mouth. And I wanted to pull the trigger so bad. Invariably, I'd black out. Come to the next morning, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why can't I stop? You know, and I'd look out the window, there'd be kids on their way to school, people on their way to work, and I'd go, another day. You know, I don't know if, for me, it was not the day I was using or the night that I was using, it was the next day. It's when I came to it, I was still alive. When I came to it, I had remorse and regret. And I was restless and I was irritable, I was discontent. It talks about in that big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, until I could have that ease and comfort that comes from taking another drink. And I say, no, I'm not going to drink, but invariably I would drink. It talks about it. If you don't have a program, invariably you're going to drink. And I would start off and I'd drink, and next thing you know, I'm back in the closet, gun in the mouth, going to die. But a couple of days after my twin sister called me and said she was praying for me and all that kind of crap, I came to one morning and it was 5 or 6 in the morning, and I decided to walk outside to get some air. And as I walked outside to get some air, there was this woman walking her dog. And she looked at me and she said, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And I looked at her and I said, well, I've been sick for a while. And she looked me dead in the eye. She said, you look like you're a drug addict. I was indignant. And then I said, I am a drug addict. How'd you know? She said, because I'm a drug addict too. Then I said, do you have any drugs? What else? And she said, no, I don't have any drugs. She said, I haven't had to use any drugs in over 9 years, or 8 years at that time. I said, so how'd you do that? She said, I'm a sober member of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then she asked the stupidest question ever. She said, I'm going to a meeting tonight. Would you like to go? I said, no, I can't go tonight. I'm busy. And I was back in the closet, gun to mouth. But later on that day, there was a knock on my door. And nobody came to visit me. And I looked out, and there she was, knocking on my door. And I said, okay, if I don't answer, she'll go away. She yelled out, I know you're there. You never go anywhere. Open the door. And so finally I opened the door, and she rushed into the house. And she said, I have some food for you. Please eat. And she said, I'm not leaving until you eat the food. And I started eating the food, and she just started watching me and started talking about nonsense. And when I finished eating, she said, I'm going to a meeting tonight. Would you like to go? And I said, no, I can't go tonight. I'm busy. And so she went, and then the next day she did the same damn thing. And she did this for the next week every day. And every day I started looking for her, you know what I mean? And I know that since she was a madam, I knew what she was really coming over for. And then one day I read an article in Playboy magazine. This article talked about if you have some type of arrogant behavior and you wish to stop this behavior, if you set a significant day in your life to stop this behavior, you have a 50% better chance of stopping. And my birthday was coming up. So I said, okay, I'm going to tell this woman I'll stop. I showed the article, stop on my birthday. She stopped coming to see me. I won't have to go to that A&A stuff. Da-da-da. So that she came over that day. I showed her the article. I said, I'm going to stop on my birthday. And she said, when's your birthday? I said, my birthday is October 11th. She said, guess what? I said, what? She said, that's my birthday too. Coincidence. Then I said, I made a big mistake. I said, what would you like for a birthday present? She said, I'd like for you to attend a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. October 11th, 1981, I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, Federal Street Young People's Meeting, 7:30 p.m. Sunday night. 3 significant things happened to me at that meeting. The first of which, you know, there's that one person that's worse than you are, that one person really needs to be in AA. That person for me was in the room that night. Now, he claimed he had 30 days sober, but I knew better because I got keen alcoholic thinking. I knew she had gone out, paid him $50, brought him to the meeting. No. The second thing that happened was the speaker that night was a guy named Danny T. And Danny and I had been in youth authority together. And I knew Danny was a badass who had gone on to Folsom or St. Quentin or one of those institutions of higher learning. And there he was claiming to be sober 9 years or 10 years or how many ever years he had. And he was telling people about robbing an ABC market, and before he could get out, he was so loaded he passed out, woke up in the back of a police car. And everybody started laughing. I go, God, these are some sick people in this room. But the third and most significant thing that happened to me that night is she gave me a present. The present she gave me was a book. When she gave me the book, she said, Tony, this is the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Bless you. She said, you may or you may not be an alcoholic. She said, alcoholism is a self-diagnosed disease, and only you can determine if you're an alcoholic. She said, if you read this book and you identify with anything in this book, you may be an alcoholic. She says you can replace the word alcohol with anything you like. Quaaludes, cocaine, vodka, it doesn't matter. She said, if you identify, then there's a possibility you are an alcoholic. And if there's a possibility you are an alcoholic and you wish to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, then Alcoholics Anonymous offers you a proven program of recovery. And she said it again. She said Alcoholics Anonymous offers a proven program of recovery. She gave me the book and she stopped coming to see me. And the reason was she's worked the perfect 12-step. Absolutely perfect. I didn't know that. You see, she'd given me the program, or she gave me the book. I'd been to a meeting and I'd seen the fellowship. I've seen the fellowship in action. I'd heard the music of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the laughter that we all have this thing that we identify with. You know, and I'd like to tell you I got sober on that day, but it was not. It was October 11th. Tony Fest was on, back in the closet, gun in the mouth, gonna die next 2 or 3 days. But somewhere between October 11th and October 20th of 1981, I decided to do something differently. And if you're new today in Alcoholics Anonymous, the program is designed to get you to do something differently. The only thing different I did that day is I decided to go to the beach. When I went to the beach, I took my normal beach-going paraphernalia, some weed, some blow, a couple of Quaaludes, and I took a book to read. The book I thought was Irving Wallace, but when I got there, it was the book Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm drinking a beer, smoking some weed, dropped a Quaalude, did a little blow. All right, fuck, F it, I'll read the book. And what I read in that book changed my life forever. I may have been high, I don't know. But I read chapter 3. Chapter 3 says, no person likes to admit he is unlike his fellows. Therefore, his drinking career is characterized by countless vain attempts to prove he can trade like other people. Said this idea is astonishing, and many pursue it to the gates of insanity and death. Says many pursue it to the gates of insanity and death. And that's where I stood. I recognized that I stood at the gates of insanity and death. And I had, for me, what can best be described as a spiritual experience of a sudden kind that day. Because from that day to this day, I have not taken a drink nor done anything that affected me from the neck up. I threw away all the drugs I had that day, and I went back to this woman, and I go, I don't know what to do. Something happened. She said, well, you got to start going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, well, I'm not an alcoholic. She said, that's okay. You go to meetings anyway. I said, how many meetings? She said, you got to go till you like them. I said, no. How many meetings? She said, well, we normally recommend 90 meetings in 90 days, but for you, 365 meetings in 365 days. So I started going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you got to understand, I was not an alcoholic. I was just having some problems with not having for me freebase cocaine. But what started happening is I started going to these meetings, and one night she took me to a meeting, and I heard this little short black guy named Milton Murrow, who used to be in a doo-wop group, and Milton starts his pitches, and this is what he says. He says, my name is Milton, and I don't eat watermelon. And he said, the reason I don't eat watermelon, I don't want anybody to know I'm black. And I like, oh my God. That was a secret in my family. My mother did not allow us to eat a watermelon in public. So I knew he was talking to me. After the meeting, I went up and go, how'd you know that? How'd you know that? He said, son, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. The minute you're willing to listen for the similarities and not the differences, you will say the words, me too. So I needed a sponsor about that time, and I had this problem I wasn't telling anybody about. It was a secret, and you know, the secret was I was still hearing these voices. The voices were coming out of the walls and the ceilings, and so I said, I'm going to check this guy out. So I called him that night and I said, hey, I have this problem and I'm hearing these voices. And he said, well, I have a suggestion for that. He gave me a suggestion. Two most important things happened that night. One, I told a person a secret, and number two, I asked for help. The essence of this program. And what he told me to do, I got up the next morning and I did it. I stood in the middle of my bedroom. I said, hey, listen, you guys. I said, you may or you may not know this, but I'm now a sober member of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, would you like to go to a meeting today? And I have not heard a voice since. And so this guy became, I asked him to be my sponsor. He says, no, I'll be your friend. And until the day he died last year, he was the best friend I ever had in my life. His name was Milton Murrell. And he told me the essence and how to stay clean and sober in this program one day at a time. He told me I have to get in this program and not on this program. He told me we don't work the steps because work is a bad word for alcoholics. He said we live this program. We live this program to the best of our abilities in our daily lives. He told me, as somebody said here, I think it was 41 years, says, we don't drink, we don't use, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. And he said, are you willing? And I became willing. I became willing to stay sober and clean, no matter what, no matter what. And he told me the secret. In these last 32 years, I've had a lot of stuff happen. But my sponsor told me early on, he says, son, we do not get beyond the human condition. Just because you get sober, you're not immune to heartache, heartbreak, ups, downs, loneliness, depression, whatever. We just take life as it comes because we have a way of living. It allows us to circumvent and get around this thing. So the idea of sobriety is to live comfortably with unresolved problems. To live comfortably with unresolved problems. And I've been able to live a life beyond my wildest dreams. I was just talking about Gary. Gary and I went to Africa. And we went with the most famous person in the world. I mean, who does that? I can't get out of my bedroom closet. You understand that? I'm there with a gun in my mouth. We're on the plane. I remember Gary says, "This beats the closet, doesn't it?" And I just look around the room, and I can just tell you that in my life I've traveled all over the world. I've been places I've never only dream of. I've been with people that have more money than God, but it doesn't help them. My sponsor told me early on. He says 3 things to this program: clean house, trust God, be of service. Clean house, trust God, be of service. And these are embodied in the steps of this program. We learn how to take advantage of this program. Because I'm a sick guy, man. And what happens is I'm trying to get well here. That's all. I'm just trying to get well one day at a time. I'm 32 years sober. I'm still kind of sick. I'm still a little nuts. But I love my life. And I got friends that I never dreamed of. I'm looking at Whit right there. I mean, I've known this guy forever. I can just look at people here. And unbelievable. I didn't ask for any of this. I was just having some problems with not having for me freebase cocaine. I didn't want to get sober. I just wanted to stay here for 90 days and get my girlfriend back. And I got more, much, much more than I could ever have dreamed of. I'm going to read this thing. I read it sometimes because I like it. It's about my life. It says, it's called my autobiography in 5 short chapters. Chapter 1, I walk down the street and there's a deep hole in the sidewalk and I fall in. I am lost, I'm helpless, it isn't my fault, and it takes forever to get out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it and I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault, and it takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still fall in, you see, it's a habit. My eyes are open, I know where I am, it is my fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, and I walk around it. In chapter 5, I walked down a different street. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, welcome to a different street. God bless you. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I'm supposed to stay up here. Okay, Jonathan, you have a question.
I do, thanks, Tony. You had mentioned about the big book, right around when you got sober, about they said you could take out the word alcohol and put in your drug of choice. And did you have a problem with substituting your drug of choice for alcohol and working the 12 steps?
The question was, they told me that I could take out the word alcohol and substitute my drug of choice, and did I have a problem doing that? The answer is no, not at all. But then I found out there's actually, when you read the big book, there's not that many references to alcohol. There are references to living more than there are to alcohol. How to live successfully without drinking. You know, it's more of that in there than there is about alcohol. Hope that answers you. Yes, ma'am.
If you're still an atheist, can you explain to us your higher power?
Oh, I'm not an atheist anymore. The question was, if I'm still an atheist, can I explain to my higher power? The answer is I'm not an atheist. I'll tell you a quick little story. When I was 5 years sober, I had a stroke, and I was paralyzed entirely on my left side. I mean, entirely paralyzed. I came to in the UCLA neurosurgical ward, and some of my friends from Alcoholics Anonymous were outside in the alcove. They wouldn't let them in. You know how pushy you guys are. And they wouldn't let them in, and so they held a meeting outside in the alcove, and then they said the Lord's Prayer. Now, they said the Lord's Prayer, and it resonated like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. 3 hours later, I regained the use of all my limbs. I came to believe. I came to believe in a power greater than myself, which was the group of alcoholics. Some I didn't even know, but people who came and gave me the love. So I came to believe in the group first, but you know, what happens is this: you stay here long enough, you define your higher power. You know, mine is now, I couldn't even describe it to you. It's so vast. You know, all I know, it dwells within inside of me as it dwells inside of you. You know, I tend to take more of a, if you want to put it into a religious context, I tend to take more of a Buddhist look at life than I do anything else. Yes, ma'am. Yes, you.
Thank you so much for your share. I'm an alcoholic. My question is that were you able to rekindle your relationship with your mother and your sister? And how did you go about making it?
Okay, the question was I able to rekindle my relationship with my mother and my sister? The answer to that is yes. Well, I lost everything. When I was first newly sober, I lost my house, cars. I had to go live with my mother. I hadn't lived with my mother since I was 15 years old. Now, here's this thing about your parents. They're going to treat you like you're 15 years old. And my mother treated me like I was 15 years old, which was okay, because my sponsor told me, be grateful I had a place to stay. And I became friends with my mother. In the last days of her life, the last year of her life, my mother lived with me, and I took care of her as she did for me when I was a child. My twin sister and I are now best of friends. You know, I'm not saying it's because of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm saying if I were not sober, this would not be possible. I still have a brother that I'm a little estranged with, but my twin sister and I, we're good. And when my mother passed away, I was good. That's all that matters. Yeah, you. Yeah. David?
Fantastic pitch. I wanted to ask you about sponsorship. Have you been able to find a new sponsor? It's been difficult.
Ooh, good question.
I know. And how did you go about doing that? And also, maybe direct it to the newcomer as well about sponsorship.
Okay. It's a question, I'll answer the second part first. The question was, since my sponsor died, have I been able to find a new sponsor? And then the second part of that question was talk about sponsorship in relationship to the newcomer. Okay. The second part first. I think it's very important for newcomers to have sponsors. In that They're there to help you work the steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all. I don't think a sponsor's there to tell you how to run your life or do anything but help you work the steps and help you get involved in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The reason I say that, that's the way my sponsor sponsored me. And he sponsored me that, but he became much more. I was just telling somebody this morning that my sponsor became, I didn't have a father. My father left my mother early on. And this guy became more of my father. He became a guy I could go to with anything. And most of the time he'd tell me how stupid I was. But, I would go to him with anything. And he would refer me most of the time back to the book and to a step. And the second part of that question is, have I been able to find a sponsor since? No, I have not. But I have a number of sponsors. I have Gary, I have Michael, I have you, John, a bunch of people in here. Whit. I go to people all the time. If I have problems, if I'm hurting, I will go to anybody, particularly those people I love and care for. So the answer is no and yes. But I don't think anybody will ever replace my sponsor. Richie.
Tony, thank you so much, and I love you.
I love you too, Richie.
And we have a lot of history. And Linda Kay just celebrated
40 years, right.
this week, which is pretty significant. And you're a very spiritual guy. And how do you work that? Because I know but Milton, because I have, history with Milton. As a matter of fact, Milton and I were in acting class together and did the Sunshine Boys, which was kind of interesting. I'm not going to tell you which part.
I was going to say, which were you?
I was the black guy. But in your spirituality, I know that you work the 11th step a lot. Can you talk about how you with between the prayer and meditation? Because I've watched you, but you do it quietly. I want to know what's on in your head when you're doing it.
Okay, his question was, how do I work the 11th step, what goes on in my head? Start through prayer and meditation. When I get up in the morning, I tell everybody this. First thing you do when you get up is you go to the bathroom. I don't know about anybody else, but that's what I do. And when I go to the bathroom, since I'm in the bathroom, I have all my meditation books, and I sit quietly on my toilet. I sit on my toilet and meditate. Because I'm going to be there anyway. So since I'm there, why not? And, and I'll read a passage from one of my books, and I'll say my prayers. I say the third step, the 11th step, the third step and the 7th step prayer, and I have a couple of other rote prayers I say every day. And I do my little, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 1 minute. It's hard for me to sit for 20 minutes, I can tell you that. But it's easy for me to be quiet and quiet my mind for a minute and let God come in. And, and during the day I do pause a lot and stop and say, thy will be done. Particularly things not going my way. Because I have a plan for everything going my way, and a lot of times it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's God's will. And generally it comes out better than I would have hoped for anyway. So that's kind of what I do, And Richie too is one of my sponsors because he knows a lot of the trials and tribulations that I've gone through. And we have room for one more question. I'm not going to ask you, Kenny. There's a guy behind. No, not you either, Don. Oh, no, not you. Definitely not you. Yes, sir.
Jacob Attic.
Hey, Jacob.
Tony, thanks for the share. I saw you just last week,
Right.
and it was great. Can you talk a little bit about using dreams? Did you have them? What were they like? How did you get out of your mind and talk to yourself?
Okay, good question. Jacob asked me about using dreams, about dreams that appear so real that you wake up and go, did I do that? I never had one of those. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I have using dreams every now and then. I have them now because everything is designed to get you to drink, and drinking looks good sometimes. And some of the movies I've seen lately are designed to get you to use, like we did in the '70s. And yeah, I've had them. But you know what? I discovered this thing about using dreams is I think that's a subconscious defense against using. Because when you wake up, you're so scared that you used, and you're so happy when you didn't. And that means that I really want to stay sober. That's kind of the way I look at them. That's kind of the way I explain it to them, because sometimes, in the movies or commercials, they make drinking and using look good. But I always try to remember the last day before I got here. It was not good. Did not look pretty. There was not a beautiful blonde all naked in front of me. Sorry. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much.